everyone. Welcome to 15 Minutes. I'm Andrew Huff. Our guest today is King County Superior Court Judge Beth Andrus. Judge Andrus, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much
How
for
have
the
you
invitation. I'm doing very well, thank you. And you?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
You were appointed to the bench in 2005 by Governor Gregoire.
2010.
2010, reelected ever since.
Yes.
You grew up in the Midwest. Whereabouts specifically?
I am from Michigan originally, born in Saginaw, but lived most of my childhood in fairly rural Michigan. My father was a Methodist minister, and so we moved around from parish to parish. And then when I was a junior in high school, I spent a year in Finland, and then came back to a suburban Detroit area to finish up my high school.
My wife is also from the Midwest, and she talks about these values that Midwest people have. Self-reliance, hard work, taking care of others. I guess that's where the term Midwest values comes from. You would probably agree with that description.
Well, certainly those are values that I was raised with, so I would agree that that those are prevalent values that I was familiar with as a young adult, child and young adult. I'm sure that everybody in the Pacific Northwest thinks that they share those values as well, but that was certainly a part of my upbringing.
When you were growing up in high school, who did you admire?
Growing up in high school, who did I admire? Wow. Oh, I can't even remember back that far.
Were there some influential people that you studied, either in the law?
Well, you know, at the time in high school, I had no idea I wanted to be a lawyer. In fact, because I grew up in fairly rural areas, I had never even met an attorney. Didn't know any judges, didn't know what lawyers really did. And it really wasn't until I was in college and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do after graduating from college that I thought that law school might be a good option for me. So I can't say as a child that there were any lawyers or judges that were influential in my life. I didn't have any access at that time.
You did decide, as you mentioned, to become an exchange student.
I did.
And you lived in Finland for a year.
Correct.
Why did you decide on Finland?
You know, it was a fairly arbitrary decision that I think many parents of 15-year-olds probably understand. You make arbitrary calls at the time. We had at the time I was considering this a Finnish student who was living with my best friend, and he was an exchange student from Finland and strongly encouraged me to apply to travel to that country. They also took a very large number of American students. They were very, very active in the exchange program. And you did not need to speak a foreign language in order to qualify to go to Finland, which you did need if you wanted to be on the continent of Europe. So Finland was, I think, a choice that I put down because of my exposure to this other exchange student. And I had just a marvelous, marvelous experience.
I've never been to Finland, but the photos I've seen are just breathtaking.
Yeah.
Home to the original Santa Claus,
yes,
I found out the other day as well.
Yes.
Did you stay in Helsinki for the most part, or did
No,
you travel around?
I actually lived in a small town outside of Tampere. There are 3 major cities in Helsinki, and I was in a small town called Vammala outside of Tampere, which is inland from the coast.
The pronunciation of that is right on, by the way.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
I would know.
They don't call it Vammala anymore. I've learned from a girlfriend that they've changed the name of the town to Sastamala from Vammala, which I don't know why, but the name has changed since the 30 years ago that I was there, 30 plus.
What was really the coolest sight that you saw in Finland? What really stands out in your mind?
I think Lapland was a phenomenal experience. I was there in both the summertime and in the winter. In the winter, you have no sunlight. Basically, you can see a little bit of haze for just a brief period of time. Very cold, beautiful snow. Everything is covered with snow. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous place. In the summertime, when we were up there were just herds and herds of reindeer out grazing, out roaming. They get herded every year by the Sami, the local indigenous population. But during the summertime, they just roam free, and you have to beep the horn to get the reindeer off the roads, and that was quite a beautiful sight to see.
A friend of mine visited there and said you have to see the Red Rock Church, I think is how he did. It's an actual church built into the rock. Were you able to see that?
Yes, yes, and one of the things that was really impressive of all of the churches in Finland was the gigantic pipe organs in every one of the churches, and this one had one as well, and the acoustics were beautiful because of the shape of the church and the rock surrounding. So just a gorgeous, gorgeous place. The architecture was really interesting in Finland. That's always been something that they've considered one of their forte. They have some very preeminent architects. In fact, the architect of the St. Louis Arch is a Finn.
Is that right?
Yes. So they have a real strong design culture. So.
When you were finished with high school, you obtained your bachelor's degree from Wayne State University, law degree from University of Minnesota.
Correct.
Why did you decide that you wanted to enter law school?
When I was in college, I have a double major. The first major was French, and the other major was speech communications, public relations.
Okay.
And I had an internship on the public relations side of things with Michigan Bell, which at the time was breaking up. The old AT&T monopoly was breaking up
into Baby Bells.
The Baby Bells. And I had a professor who was my internship sponsor, and she and I were in the corporate office because we were writing speeches for corporate executives as a part of my internship. And she pointed out a woman who was getting into the executive suite elevator. And she said, if you want to go into business, what you want is a law degree. That is corporate counsel. She has a law degree. That's what you really should consider. And I thought, well, I'm interested in business. I'm interested in a graduate level degree. I was less interested in going on in French to teach. So that's ultimately what led me to look into law school and to apply to law school.
Do you speak fluent French now?
I would say I'm proficient. I was fluent at one time, but obviously I'm a little rusty. I have absolutely no problem conversing with people when I go to France, but I can't say that I can sit and dissect Descartes any longer in French. But I did it one time, but not any longer.
After law school, you had the distinction of working for a very well-known judge, U.S. Eighth Circuit Court Judge Gerald Haney.
Yes.
Tell me about that experience. He was actually appointed by Lyndon Johnson. He'd been on the bench almost 40 years. What was that experience like for you? That
was the deciding factor for me in wanting to become a judge when I worked for Judge Haney. Judge Haney brought to the position, even though he was a federal appellate judge, he brought a certain set of values. And one of those values was, no matter who is before us, before me, whether it is a corporation, someone who has been convicted of a crime and is seeking review of his conviction, someone who is looking for disability benefits and they come from a rural part of the country and have very little in the way of resources, no matter who they are, they get the same amount of attention by me as the judge to their case. And he really instilled in all of the lawyers who worked for him that I expect you to give as much attention to these people as you can, because this is really the court of last resort for most of them. Because the U.S. Supreme Court takes so few cases, the likelihood that they would get judicial review beyond him was slim. And he said, I want every page of the transcripts to be read. I want to know everything that happened in these cases because I want to ensure fairness and due process for everybody who comes before me. He believed in the system. He believed in the judicial system and in the fact that the judicial system could, in fact, provide justice and access to justice for everybody in our country. And that was something we talked a lot about. He was a remarkable man. He had been a ranger in World War II. He had landed on Normandy Beach. He had led a platoon all the way from the shores of Normandy Beach to Czechoslovakia.
Amazing.
So he had had some incredible life experiences and yet was so strongly supportive of what and how important our judicial system is for the rule of law in this country. And that really led me to want to become a judge.
We've been hearing much about the issue of free exercise of a religion lately. He authored a very important decision, Chess v. Widmar, where a student religious group at a university were denied access to use a meeting space at the university. And he decided under the free access clause of religion that they had every right to use meeting space at the university.
He considered himself to be very strong supporter of constitutional rights. that he felt that it was important to protect those rights, to conserve them, and to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to exercise those rights. And again, another value that he instilled in me as seeing that as an important role for the judiciary.
It sounds like an incredible experience.
Yeah.
And one that
Wonderful
clearly
man.
was a great influence on you as your legal career.
Yes, significant.
You at some point moved on to some work in the civil practice world,
Right.
some civil work for a firm, actually becoming not just a partner but a managing partner.
Mm-hmm.
That must have just been an incredible amount of work that you had held over you, not just to be a practicing attorney, but to be a managing partner of a major law firm. What was that like for you?
Well, to be fair to my colleagues and my partners, it was a law firm of 15 attorneys, and it was an incredibly collegial group. So it certainly was not a difficult task in the sense of having to manage hundreds of lawyers. And I got a lot of assistance from my partners. It was by no means a solo performance. But it is a different perspective because not only do you need to manage your own caseload, you need to also deal with developing your own practice and figuring out how to network and build a practice to convince clients that you are the one that they should look to for
Right.
their legal services. But you also then need to attend to the needs of those that you employ. And how do you be a good employer? How do you ensure that they have career development opportunities, that they have good work to work on, interesting work, not just for the associate attorneys, but also for paralegals and support staff. So you had to blend a number of roles, from human resources to collection on bills, to
Right.
developing your own practice, to publishing articles, to then being a really, really good lawyer in the courtroom. So it was a very interesting collection of skill sets that you had to develop in that process. But I enjoyed it very much.
And you did that for about, I think, 20 years or so before you decided that you wanted to become a judge.
That's right. I was in private practice for 21 years before joining the bench in 2010.
Why did you decide that you wanted to become a judge?
I was very interested in figuring out the right time to transition from private practice to a judicial position. As I said, I've pretty much known since I worked for a judge that this was where I wanted to be. And I have never looked back. It was the right transition for me at the right time. So it really was an opportunity for me now to serve this community, to give back, and to provide, hopefully share some of the experience, the depth of my experience, the breadth of the things that I did in private practice, to bring that to the bench and share that in my decision making.
You have said there are two major influential figures in your life, both prior judges, Judge Marcia Peckman and
Still current judge,
and
yep.
Judge Sharon Armstrong.
Right.
Why are those two individuals? Why were they of such influence to you?
They had a significant influence on me as a young lawyer because both of them were on the bench when I first started practicing, or shortly thereafter when I first started practicing here in Seattle. Very smart individuals, very remarkable judicial demeanor, and excellent case management skills. They exemplify the types of skills that I hope to achieve as a judge, making everyone feel that their position is being heard, but able to make very decisive judgments, that everyone understands what the ruling is and how they got there, in a way that is not arrogant or in any way a sense that they think that they're smarter than everyone else. They're able to really communicate their decisions well, and I hope to emulate that very much.
King County Superior Court Judge Beth Andrus. Judge Andrus, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us, everyone. We hope you join us again for another 15 minutes. We'll see you soon.